Mom, Emma has a fever of 103. We're in the ER right now, and I really need someone to watch Liam while I'm here. Can you help? I clutched my phone tighter, already knowing the answer before my mother's voice came through with that familiar sigh, the one that made me feel like I was inconveniencing her by existing. Oh, Megan, what did you feed that child now? I've told you 100 times about all those processed foods. My 4-year-old daughter was curled up on the hospital bed beside me, her usually rosy cheeks flushed with fever, her small body radiating heat. The pediatrician had already mentioned possible pneumonia, and my heart was racing with worry. Meanwhile, my 6-year-old son was with a neighbor who'd graciously agreed to watch him, but could only do so for another hour. Mom, this isn't about food. Emma is really sick. The doctor thinks it might be pneumonia. It's always something with your kids, isn't it? Did you try giving her that immune support vitamin I told you about last month? I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to stay calm. I need to go now. They're taking her for a chest x-ray. I hung up before she could respond, before I could hear another word about how I was failing as a mother. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Vanessa. Mom just called. Sorry about Emma. Hope she feels better soon. We can't help with Liam, though. Tyler has a little sniffle, and you know how Mom and Dad are about keeping the kids apart when they're under the weather. A little sniffle. My nephew had a sniffle, while my daughter was fighting pneumonia, and that was the reason no one could help. I stared at the message until the words blurred, then tucked my phone away as the nurse called Emma's name. 3 hours later, we left the hospital with a pneumonia diagnosis, antibiotics, and instructions for home care. Emma was drowsy from the medication they'd given her for the fever, her small hand limp in mine as I carried her to the car. Liam was now with Mrs. Patel from 2 doors down, who had kindly offered to keep him overnight when she heard about Emma's condition. A woman I barely knew had shown more compassion than my own family. I tucked Emma into her bed, set up the humidifier, and collapsed onto the couch with my laptop to email my boss. There was no way I could make the client meeting tomorrow. As I typed, my phone buzzed again. My mother. How is she? No hello. No acknowledgement of how she'd left me stranded hours earlier. She has pneumonia. They've started her on antibiotics. I told you about those vitamins. Your sister gives them to Tyler and Lily every day, and they hardly ever get sick. She paused. Except for Tyler's allergies, of course. Ah, yes, Tyler's allergies. My nephew's periodic sneezes had been turned into a full medical drama by my parents and sister. Last month, they'd rushed him to 3 different specialists because he sneezed twice at the park. Meanwhile, when Liam had broken his arm falling from the jungle gym last summer, my mother had suggested that perhaps he was just being dramatic, and I should wait and see before taking him to the ER. Your father and I are taking Tyler to Dr. Shearer tomorrow. He's the best allergist in 3 counties, you know. We had to pull some strings to get the appointment, but that's what grandparents do. My throat tightened. Mom, I have to go. Emma needs me. After hanging up, I leaned back against the couch and closed my eyes. This wasn't new. It had been this way since Vanessa and I were kids. She was the fragile one, the one who needed protection. I was the strong one, expected to handle everything on my own. Only now, the pattern had extended to our children. When Liam was born 6 years ago, my parents had visited once, stayed for exactly 2 hours, and left because my father claimed the baby powder irritated his sinuses. When Tyler was born 8 months later, they had practically moved in with Vanessa for 3 weeks, cooking, cleaning, and doting on their new grandson. I'd tried to ignore it. I'd told myself that Vanessa needed more help than I did. She had postpartum depression. Her husband traveled constantly for work. They lived in a small apartment while I had a house. There were always reasons, always excuses. But now, watching my daughter struggle to breathe through her congestion, something shifted inside me. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about my children being treated as less worthy of care and concern than their cousins. And for the first time, I allowed myself to feel the full force of the anger I'd been suppressing for years. 2 days later, Emma's fever finally broke. She was still weak and needed plenty of rest, but the worst was over. Liam had been amazing, bringing his sister juice and reading her stories, showing more maturity than I'd ever seen from him. I was exhausted but relieved. My phone rang. It was my father this time. Megan, we need you to pick up a prescription for Tyler. Your sister is at the allergist with him, and your mother went along, but they forgot to get his medicine yesterday. We're heading to their place now to set up the new air purifier, but someone needs to get the prescription. I blinked in disbelief. Dad, Emma is recovering from pneumonia. I can't leave her to drive across town for Tyler's allergy meds. It'll only take an hour. Liam can watch her, can't he? He's what, 7 now? He's 6, Dad. And no, I'm not leaving my sick 4-year-old in the care of her 6-year-old brother. This is serious, Megan. The doctor says Tyler's pollen sensitivity could develop into full-blown asthma if it's not managed properly. Emma has pneumonia, Dad. Actual pneumonia. Diagnosed by actual doctors. She's been on antibiotics and running a fever of 103 for days. I'm not leaving her. There was a long pause. I always thought you were the responsible one, he finally said. Your sister would do it for you. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, a strange calm settling over me. In that moment, something crystallized in my mind. This wasn't a momentary lapse or an isolated incident. This was a pattern that had defined my entire relationship with my family. I opened my laptop and began a document. At the top, I typed, "Documented incidents of differential treatment." Then I started writing, recalling every instance I could remember when my children's health concerns had been dismissed while my sister's children's minor ailments had been treated like emergencies. Liam's broken arm, Emma's ear infections, the time Liam had strep throat and my mother suggested he just needed to gargle with salt water. Meanwhile, when Lily had a mild rash, my parents had driven her to the emergency room at midnight. Over the next week, as Emma recovered, I continued to add to my document. I also started searching through old text messages and emails, taking screenshots, saving everything. I wasn't exactly sure what I planned to do with all this evidence, but gathering it felt empowering, like I was finally acknowledging a truth I'd been trying to ignore for years. The following Saturday, my sister called. Mom and Dad are organizing a family dinner next Sunday. They wanted me to check if you're coming. I hesitated. Is Tyler's sniffle better? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Vanessa didn't seem to notice. Oh, it's much worse than a sniffle. The allergist says he's sensitive to 14 different environmental triggers. Mom and Dad bought him this special vacuum that costs like $2,000. Can you believe it? They're installing HEPA filters in his bedroom, too. Wow, I said flatly. That's quite a response to some sneezing. It's not just sneezing, Megan. Don't minimize his condition. He could develop asthma. I bit my tongue. And what about when Emma had pneumonia? When I needed someone to watch Liam because I was in the ER with my seriously ill child? Why wasn't that treated with the same urgency? The line went quiet for a moment. That's completely different, Vanessa finally said, her voice tight. Emma got sick because what? Because I'm a bad mother? Because I feed her processed food? Go ahead, Vanessa. Say what you and Mom and Dad really think. You're being ridiculous. No one thinks you're a bad mother. We just think you could be more proactive about their health, like I am with Tyler and Lily. Proactive, I repeated. You mean paranoid, right? Running to specialists over a sneeze, buying $2,000 vacuums? I don't have to listen to this, Vanessa snapped. Either you're coming to dinner or you're not. I took a deep breath. Tell Mom and Dad we won't be there. In fact, tell them we won't be at any family gatherings for a while. I need some time to think. Think about what? God, you're being so dramatic. Goodbye, Vanessa. After hanging up, I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd put down a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years. For the first time, I'd stood up for myself and my children, and it felt right. That evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, her fever completely gone now, her breathing easy and regular, she looked up at me with those big, trusting eyes. Mommy, are we going to see Grandma and Grandpa soon? I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Not for a while, sweetheart. We're going to spend some time, just us for now. Because they don't care when I'm sick? Her perception startled me. Even at 4, she'd picked up on the dynamic. It's complicated, baby, but I want you to know that you matter. You and Liam are the most important people in the world to me, and when you're sick or hurt, it's a big deal. It's always a big deal. She nodded solemnly, and I felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it almost took my breath away. The next morning, I had 3 missed calls from my mother and a text message that simply read, "Vanessa says you're not coming to dinner. You're being childish." I didn't respond. Instead, I called my therapist, whom I'd been seeing on and off since Liam was born, and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. Mrs. Patel had offered to watch the kids anytime I needed a break, and this definitely qualified. Dr. Winters listened as I poured out the whole story, from the recent incident with Emma's pneumonia back through years of differential treatment. What you're describing sounds like a family dynamic where you've been cast in the role of the strong one who doesn't need help, while your sister has been assigned the role of the vulnerable one who requires constant support, she said when I finished. These roles often get established in childhood and can be very rigid. They can also extend to the next generation, as you're seeing with your children versus your sister's children. So what do I do? You've already taken the first step by setting a boundary, declining the dinner invitation. The question now is, what do you want your relationship with your parents and sister to look like going forward? I thought about it. I want them to treat my children with the same concern and care they show Vanessa's kids. I want them to stop dismissing my children's illnesses and stop implying that I'm a bad mother. Those are reasonable requests, but you should be prepared for resistance. Family systems don't change easily. She was right. The next week brought a barrage of texts and calls. My father accused me of tearing the family apart. My mother alternated between guilt trips. "After all we've done for you," and dismissals. "You've always been too sensitive." Vanessa sent a long message about how I was just jealous of the bond she shared with our parents. I didn't engage. Instead, I focused on my children, my work, and my own well-being. I joined a single-parent support group at the community center, where I met other mothers and fathers navigating similar waters. For the first time, I allowed myself to build a support network outside my family. 3 weeks after I'd set my boundary, my mother showed up unannounced at my door. I was in the backyard with the kids, watching them play in the sprinkler on a warm spring day, when I heard the doorbell. Through the window, I could see her standing on the porch, clutching her purse with that pinched expression she wore when she was preparing for a confrontation. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "So this is how it's going to be," she said by way of greeting. "You're just going to cut us out of your life? Out of the children's lives?" "Hello to you too, Mom." I stepped aside to let her in, but remained standing in the entryway. "I haven't cut anyone out. I've asked for some space while I figure things out." "Figure what out? What is there to figure out? You're being overly dramatic, as usual." There it was again. The dismissal, the minimizing of my feelings. But this time, instead of absorbing the criticism, I addressed it directly. "That's exactly what I'm talking about, Mom. You dismiss my concerns. You minimize my children's health issues while treating Vanessa's kids' minor ailments like emergencies. It's a pattern, and it's not fair to Liam and Emma. That's ridiculous. We treat all our grandchildren the same." I walked to the kitchen counter where my laptop sat open, the document of incidents displayed on the screen. "Let me show you something." For the next 15 minutes, I walked her through my evidence, the text messages, the emails, the documented incidents. Her face grew increasingly flushed as I spoke, but she didn't interrupt. "Last month," I concluded, "Emma had pneumonia. She was in the hospital, and you and Dad couldn't be bothered to help with Liam or even visit her. That same week, you drove Tyler to 3 different specialists because he sneezed at the park, and you bought him a $2,000 vacuum cleaner. Can you honestly tell me that's equal treatment?" My mother was silent for a long moment, her fingers fidgeting with the clasp of her purse. "Tyler has special needs," she finally said. "His allergies are not more important than pneumonia," I cut in. "And even if they were, the issue isn't just about medical conditions. It's about the consistent message you send to my children that they matter less than their cousins. It's about how you treat me like I'm an incompetent mother while praising Vanessa for taking Tyler to a specialist for a sniffle." "We've never said you're incompetent." "You don't have to say it explicitly, Mom. It's in every sigh, every critical comment about what I feed them, Every suggestion that their illnesses are somehow my fault. It's in the way you drop everything for Vanessa's kids, but can't be bothered to help when mine are truly in need. My mother stood up abruptly. I didn't come here to be attacked. I'm not attacking you. I'm trying to have an honest conversation about a pattern that's hurting me and my children. If you're not willing to acknowledge it, then yes, we need some distance. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. Not quite understanding, but perhaps the beginning of it. What do you want from us, Megan? I want you to treat all your grandchildren equally. I want you to stop dismissing my concerns about my children's health. I want you to stop implying that I'm a bad mother. And I want an acknowledgement that the way you've been treating us isn't fair. She picked up her purse. I need to think about this. Take all the time you need, Mom. But until something changes, we won't be attending family gatherings. After she left, I felt a mix of emotions, sadness, relief, and a strange new sense of power. For the first time, I had confronted the dynamic head-on instead of making excuses for it. That evening, I received a text from my father. Your mother is very upset. I don't understand why you're doing this to the family. I replied simply, I'm not doing anything to the family. I'm protecting my children from a pattern of neglect and favoritism. When you're ready to discuss that honestly, I'm here. 2 days later, Vanessa called. What did you say to Mom? She's been crying for 2 days. I showed her evidence of how differently our children are treated when they're sick or hurt. That's insane. There's no different treatment. Really? Where were you when Emma had pneumonia and I needed help with Liam? Tyler was sick too. He had a sniffle, Vanessa. A sniffle. And yet Mom and Dad mobilized like it was a national emergency, while my daughter was in the hospital with an actual life-threatening condition and no one could be bothered to help. You've always been jealous of my relationship with Mom and Dad. I sighed. This isn't about jealousy. This is about my children being treated as less important than yours. And until that changes, we need some distance from the family. You can't just cut us off. I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm setting boundaries until the pattern changes. Ball's in your court. The weeks that followed were challenging but clarifying. My parents and sister cycled through various tactics: guilt, anger, denial, and finally, grudging acknowledgement. My father called one evening in late April, his voice unusually subdued. Your mother and I have been talking, he said. We don't agree with everything you've said, but we recognize that perhaps we've been more attentive to Tyler and Lily's health concerns. It wasn't a full admission, but it was a start. Would you be willing to come to dinner next Sunday? Just to talk? I considered it. Yes, but I have conditions. No critique of my parenting. No dismissing Liam or Emma's health issues. And if anyone starts down that path, we'll leave immediately. That seems fair. The dinner was tense but civil. My mother hovered awkwardly around Liam and Emma, clearly unsure how to interact with them now that the dynamic had been called out. Vanessa was cool toward me, but made an effort with my kids. My father attempted stilted conversations about school and activities. It wasn't perfect, but it was different. And different was a step toward better. Over the following months, the changes were subtle but significant. When Liam came down with a stomach virus in May, my mother actually called to check on him and dropped off ginger ale and crackers. When Tyler had another allergy emergency in June, no one asked me to rearrange my schedule to accommodate it. Most tellingly, at a family gathering in July, I overheard my mother correct my father when he started to question whether Emma really needed the inhaler her doctor had prescribed for exercise-induced asthma. If her doctor prescribed it, she needs it, my mother said firmly. We're not second-guessing medical professionals anymore. My father had looked surprised, then nodded slowly. It wasn't a complete transformation. Old patterns resurfaced occasionally, and I still had to enforce my boundaries firmly. But there was progress, real progress. 1 year after Emma's pneumonia incident, I sat on my patio alone, watching the sunset and sipping a glass of wine. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Liam did so well in his school play today. We're proud of him. A simple message, but one that acknowledged my son's achievement without comparison or criticism. A message that would have been unthinkable a year ago. My children were inside, playing a board game with their father, who had them for the weekend. They were healthy, happy, and most importantly, starting to develop a more balanced relationship with their grandparents, one where they weren't second best, one where their illnesses were taken seriously and their achievements celebrated. I had no illusions that the work was done. Family dynamics don't change overnight, and there would always be vigilance required on my part. But I had found my voice, set my boundaries, and stood firm. And in doing so, I had not only protected my children, but had begun to heal something in myself. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I raised my glass in a silent toast to the woman I had become, the woman who had finally learned to fight not just for others, but for herself as well.